Okay, well, welcome everybody to the fourth edition of Everyone Gets a Job. So the title was thought of at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was thinking, what should we call this series? And it's very basic, that we want to improve the economic prosperity of all of Hamden. And the way you do that is that everybody should get a good paying job in whatever career they choose. So we've created an 8-part series. This is part 4. We started off with healthcare. We went to STEM, because Hamden is rolling out a STEM academy this fall. We recently did the trades a couple weeks ago, 10 days ago, the construction trades and traditional trades, and tonight we're doing manufacturing. We'll talk about the future sessions in just a little while. So tonight we have 4 distinguished panelists, and their bios are on your seat. Rather than spend the valuable time going over their bios, I encourage them not to talk so much about what they've done, because you could read it for yourself as it pertains. Each speaker will take 10 minutes to talk about the careers and the career opportunities in the marketplace. Then we will have question and answers for a period of time, like 20 minutes or half an hour. And then I'd like to leave another 20 minutes on the table where you can actually talk one-on-one. And we have found that that's been a very important thing for folks, both kids and parents, to be able to spend time talking to the panelists on their own, because they may have some very specific questions they want to ask. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Chris Reardon, who's a good friend and understands the job marketplace as well as anybody I've met. And then we'll go down the line based on who's on your bios. I will probably interject a little bit in between, but I want to let them roll with it. So Chris, you're up.
Thanks, Dale. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you a little bit tonight about manufacturing from more or less an economic perspective. I work for Workforce Alliance. We're the public workforce system serving New Haven and Middlesex counties in the state. And why manufacturing? What is manufacturing? I mean, really, how do you even define it at this point? Manufacturing is just making stuff. Making all kinds of different things. You take one small iota of something, you change the properties of it, it becomes something else. You add another property to it. You add 5,000 other properties to it, and you might have an airplane. And manufacturing is really where it all sort of begins. Recently, the state of Connecticut, the colleges and university system, just released a manufacturing strategic plan for the next 20 years. This series is called Everyone Gets a Job. I can tell you, if you want a career in manufacturing and you're any good at it, you're going to get a job. Everyone will get a job. Within the next 20 years, the state is predicting that there would be somewhere between 25 and 35,000 job openings in manufacturing. Now, to understand the scope of that, that's about 1 in every 2 people that live in Hamden right now, considering the population of this town. So we have a really good opportunity now to put young people and anyone who may be interested into a manufacturing career within the next several years. Why is that so? People ask me this all the time. Why do we need so many manufacturing people at this time? And there's a whole lot of different factors. One is technology advancement. Once upon a time, manufacturing was old and dirty and smelly, and you didn't want to go near it, and it was just really, really hard physical labor. And it was not a pretty thing, but technology has sort of revolutionized the industry, and it's clean now, and for the most part, it's green as well. And we need people with these kind of new skills that are able to work in that kind of an environment as companies migrate to the technology as well. The insourcing of jobs. A lot of jobs that were sent overseas are now coming back, and particularly they're coming back to Connecticut, and jobs are being created where there were once, and we're talking maybe 15 years ago, there were layoffs all over the industry. Now that industry is growing because the jobs are coming back here, and it's become more financially and intellectually more suitable to hire people locally and to see your item being made for company owners as well. And government has become a fairly large purchaser in the manufacturing industry, particularly in the state of Connecticut. Connecticut's manufacturing backbone is the defense industry, and that has skyrocketed, not only with what I call the big three, which is Electric Boat, Pratt & Whitney, and Sikorsky, which is now owned by Lockheed Martin, but all of those individuals and all of those companies have suppliers that are all over the state as well. And government work is good work. They pay their bills. And they offer some very long-term opportunities for people as well. And and this is one that most people hear about, the current workforce is aging out. The number of people that are scheduled to retire from manufacturing in the next 10 years is astronomical, and we need replacement workers to take their jobs and to bring their companies to the next level as well. And there's really new companies that continue to move into the region. And they're smaller companies, and they really focus a lot on innovation. So there's a variety of factors, which is the perfect storm for people to consider a manufacturing career. Right here, right now, there are about 13,000 unfilled manufacturing jobs in the state right now. Okay, and that's, again, astronomical. If we were at full manufacturing capacity, it would be such an economic engine for this state, but there are a lot of barriers right now to people getting jobs. Number one is lack of preparation, lack of education, and we'll talk about that extensively on our panel tonight. Number two is lack of infrastructure, particularly along the shoreline. There are jobs that go unfilled because people just can't get there as well. So, you know, it's a very, very dismantled pipeline right now. And several of us, and it's been the bulk of my body of work for the last year, is being working with some of my staff to help fix that pipeline. We have a program, and there's some propaganda over here that we'll tell you a little bit about, called Skill Up for Manufacturing, which we're working with the community college, with Gateway and Middlesex and Housatonic, to run every 6 weeks a program. We are just done with our first cohort now. We're going to be starting our second cohort in about 3 weeks. So, and that is going to go on perhaps for the next 2 or 3 years. We see that happening as well. What are people earning now in manufacturing? Entry level right now, and these folks can probably chime in later, people are earning about $45,000 entry level. If you are work for a defense contractor such as Electric Boat, however, you could be making $60,000 if you're a welder going in. And the training for welding is like a 6 to 7 week program. That will allow you to make a $60,000 wage, plus all the benefits as well. And, you know, parents get concerned, well, I want my kid to go to college. I don't want my kid to go to work right away. But one of the nice parts about manufacturing, I think, is that in many cases it's a 24-hour kind of gig. So you don't necessarily have to work your first shift. You can work afternoons, you can work evenings, and guess what? You can go to college during the day if you want to. If you like it and you can prove that your schooling is going to be directly related for your job, your company will probably pay for you to go to college. And I've got to believe that parents might like the fact that they don't have to pay for it. I know I wouldn't want to. But, you know, you have that opportunity. Some of the companies now are on the verge of adding third shifts in our region, which means, again, nighttime work, daytime sleep, daytime go to school, work balance, whatever. I want to talk a little bit about things to consider. Is manufacturing a career for you? What are some of the features there? There are career ladder positions. And what we're training in, and what many others are, with our partnership with the community colleges, are entry-level positions. There are plenty of them, but there are career ladder positions. There are supervisory positions. There are tech positions that are related. There are trades positions that are related in manufacturing. There are other support positions, and then there's management and ownership and engineering as well. So there are a good 8 or 10 good career paths to manufacturing that once you get your feet wet, if you like it, you can move up and move around in it. Some will require a degree, some will require more than one degree. But if you're looking for a lifetime opportunity in a career, manufacturing is a really good place to stay. I talked about earning while you go to school, but you know, is manufacturing for me? Would you take pride in making something? People say to me, well, what kind of transferable skills are good for manufacturing? And I always tell them, do you like to bake? Because you're taking something and you're adding something to something else, and flour and sugar and eggs and butter come out as cupcakes. And it's the same kind of principle. And you notice I say baking and not cooking, because in baking you have to use precise measurement. And in manufacturing, you better use precise measurement. So, those kind of things, if you've never given it a thought, if you like doing that kind of making, consider a career in manufacturing. The pride of making something that keeps us safe. In all the defense contractors that we have in the region, we have in our region Assa Abloy, which makes locks on doors to keep us safe. The pride of making something that may go to Mars. I talked about suppliers, and many, many suppliers in Connecticut are suppliers of SpaceX. I think it would be very, very exciting to be making something that may eventually get to Mars. The pride of something that enables people to travel. Pratt & Whitney makes jet engines. You're getting people from one place to another to experience new opportunities, new lands, new cultures as well. Making something that heals us. One of the larger manufacturers in our area is Medtronics in North Haven, which makes medical and surgical instruments as well. Something that's used in the White House or at Disney. One of our company that hires a great deal from us is Pennsylvania Globe Company, Penn Globe, out in North Branford, and they make lighting for, among other things, the White House and the Lincoln Memorial. They also make these lights that double as surveillance, that you'll never see the hidden cameras, but you are being watched in some of these cases, and they're doing very, very, very well. And finally, making something that we eat. There are a large number of food manufacturers in the region. One that comes to mind, a very large one, is Ragazzino's out in Meriden, and they have contracts with Stop and Shop, with Wegmans, with major supermarkets to manufacture their brands of products as well. And again, you need to be precise, because if you mess up on food, you're talking about spoilage and all kinds of very, very ugly things. So again, taking that to the area. What kind of skills do you need? Okay, number 1, math. Number 2, math. Number 3, math. What kind of math? Algebra 1, shop math, spatial relations, a little bit of geometry as well. But you have to get some math. Now, most of us, if we took an algebra test today, we would not really do very well in it. And it's not because we don't know math, it's because we've forgotten math. So there are all sorts of opportunities around the region for you to take sort of refresher courses. And again, as part of our initiative, we are working with, and we're working with Hamden to do these sort of math boot camps. So one need not be afraid of math for that as well. You need to be on your feet quite a bit, so you have to have some sort of physical ability to do that kind of stuff and to be able to work in teams. You have to take pride in what you do, and you have to have good computer skills as well. And again, you have to have certain situations where employers are going to be asking a bunch of questions about you. And for the most part, every manufacturer that I know will do drug testing and will conduct criminal background checks. That's not necessarily a deal breaker. In some cases, there are companies that will hire individuals with records. We know them. They don't usually like to advertise that they do, but we know who they are over at Workforce Alliance, so it should not be a deal breaker. But I applaud the town of Hamden for doing this and for introducing manufacturing to the community. We've got really, really great opportunities coming, and I hope people take advantage of them.
Thanks, Chris. I've worked with Chris for many, 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 many years in all different areas of the economy. So I'm passing around a sign-in sheet. How many of you have gone to one of the other sessions? I know you were at another session. Come on, raise your hand. So what's amazing with this whole series is from the first session to the second session to the trades to this one, we've had almost zero repeat customers. Almost every session had a completely new group of people. You were at one? So there were people at every single session that had not been to one. So that's fascinating to me. So fill it out, and what we're going to do is send you links to the other sessions. We have the videos from everything, so you'll be able to see them and tell other parents and other people to see them. And also, they'll be shown in community buildings, the Keefe Center, and so on. They'll be streaming, and they'll be online. Next, I'm going to introduce Vincent Palumbo, who actually owns a manufacturing business, and he's going to talk about his experience in his career and what's important to get going in manufacturing. 10 minutes.
Hello. Sorry about the voice. It left me today. I graduated Eli Whitney in 1986, and I went into the trade, and I worked for a series of years. Went to another company and completed my apprenticeship. I've been a tool maker for 30 plus years. I've worked directly at my company for most of the companies she mentioned, be it Sikorsky, Pratt & Whitney, Medtronic, a big one. But I didn't get into the production aspect. I got into the precise tooling aspect. And I thought it took a little bit more to get that. It was a higher end trade. Machinist is one thing, toolmaker's another. Machinist tends to do more production, which you could do very well in. A bit more of a repetitive type of job, where toolmaking was a bit more different each time. There was end game. How do you put this together? How do you arrive at that number at the end? You could see the guys that there was different levels. There was the helpers, there was the mediocre guys, there was the top guys. Now in my toolmaking trade, your skill level generates your income level. Your beginners tend to make about $40,000 a year to start. Your top end guys make 110. They work some overtime for it, but there's retirement benefits, there's holidays, there's health insurance. And it's a clean atmosphere. It was air conditioned. It was a nice place to go. And I always had it in my mind where just because you don't sit behind a desk doesn't mean you don't have a good job. It doesn't mean you're not making competitive money, because you are. And I went into the trade, and when I got out in 1990, when a lot of my friends were graduating college, I was well into my career. A few short years later, I built my own house, and they were just kind of getting off the ground, paying off loans and things of that nature. So I saw the benefit of that early on. I knew I had a gift, and certain people need to find that gift. I can't hit a golf ball 350 yards, but I can make a machine that spits out 1 million golf balls a year. and do it better than the guy did it last time. I'm looking at a job for Callaway right now. I get called in from all over. We have a new product. We never did this before. Can it be done? And that pulls me right in. So the trade is real, but it takes real talent. And you can't just get anybody and stick them behind a machine and say, go. It takes years to know, and it takes aptitude. And that's any trade. You have your electrical trades, you have your plumbing trades, you have your carpentry trades. Yes, I could pick up carpentry, but I wouldn't know exactly what to do right away. I'd have to go through my training, and take it from there. There's union jobs, which I never worked a union job. I always worked job shops and things like that. They tend to pay a little bit more. Like I say, the pay range, you get out, you start at around 16, you can make as high as $40 an hour, and you're working overtime and getting time and a half. So the stipulation, your job's going away, it's not. It depends on what you're doing. Like I was saying earlier, if you're stamping spoons out at a die shop, yeah, that job could easily be shipped over. But we make a lot of high-end, critical stuff here in Connecticut. From invasive surgical devices to jet engines to helicopters to submarines to boats to bombs to guns to cosmetics to anything you can think of. When I was younger, I worked on a machine that put the lipstick in the lipstick containers. When you turn it, the lipstick goes up and down. That's how I was able to get females to figure out how I did what I did. Because nobody knew what automation was back then. This was years ago. That was one of the first things I worked on. So I don't have anything pre-rehearsed. I don't have a long speech. I'm just telling you that this trade is real and it pays. And if you're good at it, you'll do well. But you got to put the time in. And you got to be smart. You got to know your math. You got to be able to chop a triangle up and figure out what it is. I do it still today just to keep my mind sharp, because you can easily blink it on a screen. 3D drafting, SolidWorks is worth gold out there. Now I'm starting to get hybrids, guys that can machine and draw, which I was. And you find those guys and you're in. So the guys are out there. People got to be willing to train them. You got to be trainable. Great athlete, may not be coachable, doesn't usually make it. You got to be coachable. I appreciate everybody coming out here today. I'm honored to talk to you. I wish you could hear me better. But I do own the company right up the street. I've been in business 22 years. I watched two companies come and go that I worked for. One was a big Pratt & Whitney vendor. I don't know what happened there. That guy should have been in business forever, but something went wrong. I worked for another guy that did a lot of U.S. surgical work, and then when they got sold off to Tyco dissolved them, the work dried up. Now that guy works for me for 18 years now. He's been working for me. And he makes more money now for me than he ever made working for anybody else, or for himself for that matter. But when I was working for him, I was working overtime. I was making $45,000 a year in 1990, and I was 21 years old. I was doing really good. And I lived at home for a couple of years, saved 50 grand, built a brand new house that I live in today. So getting into the trades, you will not have the financial burden of schooling, and you will get a job at a bigger company, tend to pay for a college, providing you stay there. A job like mine probably pay you college money. Like I was saying, I have guys that are well into six figures now. So that's really what's going on out there. But you gotta be precise. You gotta be on your game. You just can't go kill the day, because you're never gonna make it. You'll get eaten up just like anywhere else. There's always that core four you got, and then everybody else kind of helps out. It's the same thing in the trades. You always got your top guys, and then you got guys that aspire to be top guys and guys that may never be top guys. But you could still utilize them. They could still do things. They could take it to a certain level, Some guys are utility players and some guys aren't. But, I say, I don't say guys, there's females too. I've done a lot of work for female engineers, and there's a lot of, they're great designers. They're good on the screen. With that, they tend to be more patient with it than men do. Men got to get up. They get crazy. They don't want to stare. They don't want to stare at the screen. I mean, I didn't want to be stuck behind a desk. And I was quoting, lot 3 of Sikorsky for 2 months on this big program for budgeting, and I was going bananas in there. I couldn't wait to get away from that computer. So you got to be able to mix it up, and with the tool making trade, it's exactly what you do. There's computer work, and then there's shop work, and I look forward to getting on that shop. You do have a pride factor. I've built some machines that blew people away, and they never thought it would happen. Like I said, I have operators that kiss me when I go in those places because the lady doesn't wear elbow pads and straps on her wrists and her fingers, and it's all ergonomic and making things easy and helping people. Manufacturing has changed. It hasn't gone away. What used to take 100 people to do a job now takes 10 people with the right equipment. So it's a little different. Automation has replaced a lot of manufacturing jobs, now you can, there's lithography, you can grow plastic parts and this and that. There's a lot of things that you could do. It's really come a long way. But it's an exciting behind the scenes business. Watch how it's made, see how things go together. Because I would get toys as a kid and be like, how do they make this thing? And I'd always find myself asking that question. And I got into answering those questions, so, I'm here for questions, whatever you need to ask me.
Okay. You pumped up yet for this career? Okay, so Hamden is part of a region, and people don't only work in Hamden. We tend to look at things as part of a regional economy, even statewide economy. So it's really important to have the connections and for us to integrate ourselves throughout the 15-town New Haven region and beyond. The next speaker owns his own manufacturing company and is also the president of the New Haven Manufacturers Association. I'm going to turn it over to Jamie Scott to talk about what's going on in the marketplace and take it from there.
Thanks, Dale. Good evening. 10 minutes, so much to talk about in so little time. I'm going to get to my big yellow box in a second. I can't do PowerPoint, but at least I can make it a multi-dimensional presentation. I'll echo a lot of the comments we've already heard and add to some of it. There's over 4,000 manufacturing companies in the state employing over 160,000 people in the state of Connecticut, and we do have lots of job openings today. I focus on opportunities, I like to say, from K through career when it comes to what we do in the New Haven Manufacturers Association, because we're working in the elementary, middle, and high school level, as well as working with the technical high schools, community colleges, right on up to the college and university level throughout the state. Yesterday, for example, I met with the president of CBIA, which is our statewide Chamber of Commerce. I followed that meeting with the chair of the Connecticut School Counselors Association. This morning, met with Mayor Harp, followed by a meeting with Rob Cinto, one of the largest developers in the region. That's just in the last day and a half, and these are all meetings about the importance of manufacturing to our region, importance of manufacturing to our state's economy, and addressing what Chris said in terms of the current and future job openings that we have. So there are lots of opportunities. Hamden, just real quickly, I'll touch on a program that Dale and I are involved in. It's a program which is a new engineering program which is coming to Hamden High School. It's relevant, not necessarily to this group, but for those who might have interest in it, because a student that graduates Hamden High today has a basic high school education. In 4 years, a student that graduates through the new engineering program will not only have a high school education, but will also have upwards of an associate's degree in manufacturing technology from Gateway, 64 college credits at an associate's level. Now, what does that mean? That means that this community is truly committed to manufacturing, truly committed to education. Nadine, the principal over there, and Jody, the superintendent, they are committed to supporting education and manufacturing, providing opportunities for the folks here within Hamden, which is an awesome program. And so you really need to be proud of yourselves in this community, because no other community in the entire state is doing anything like this. And so Nadine, as the principal, said we need to make sure we're providing opportunities for all of our students. But to be able to be a student, a senior graduating high school with 64 college credits addresses this college debt issue. Chris addressed it earlier. Careers in manufacturing, you can start entry level, but with 2 years associates coming out of high school, you can get that much more ahead of your peers. You know, things that Vin was talking about. You know, it really puts you leap years ahead. And I won't take away from what Mary's going to address in terms of the career opportunities out of the VOTEC school. I mean, you hear some of the stories of those kids. They're doing awesome. But there's jobs at all levels. And so what I wanted to touch on was this here, which is Stuff Magazine. I brought about 10 copies of this. It talks about a lot of the career opportunities that are out there. There's some great resources, and while I talk about this all the time, I went online really quick. And again, it talks about everything, and I just quickly went on the state DOL site, and it talks about the different opportunities from entry-level stuff, and we've already talked about a lot of the salary ranges, but there's a lot of great resources out there. But I also want to talk about what we actually make in this area. Chris was talking about what's manufacturing. I consider manufacturing, you know, we're creating wealth. We're creating wealth for people, we're creating wealth for a community, we're creating wealth for a region. This box here, anybody know where the box is made? Right next door, Woodbridge, Connecticut, right over the hill. My neighbor makes this. While I'm in manufacturing, I work with lots of manufacturers. Plastic injection molding, one of the huge things that we make in the area. Hopefully nobody's had to wear one of these things, but this is the official air cast. The air cast all the plastic on this. This is done in Oxford at PTA Plastics. PTA Plastics currently has 30 job openings right now. Pegasus Manufacturing up in Middletown has 40 job openings right now. This thing here, Snapple bottle. Everybody's probably had a Snapple bottle before you open it up, and then there'll be a little pop, and there's a coating on here. That coating is made at Allnex. People don't think about the things that are made that we touch every day. There's a company called BIC USA. BIC USA is in Wallingford. They manufacture additive components that goes into paint, something that you don't see or think about, but what they do is they make that paint better than any other paints that are out there. It's the coating that goes on a BMW, for example. And so the thing is, we talked about exporting jobs. It's no longer happening. It's what's called reshoring today. There are jobs coming back. BIC USA is a German-owned company. They're located in Wallingford. They've invested, I don't know, upwards of 50, 60 million bucks in that facility. They're going to plan on spending another 30 to 50 million dollars in Wallingford, Connecticut, rather than going to China. Why are they not going to China? Because if they go to China, they have to release their IP, their intellectual property, to the government of China, and then China will turn around and just reproduce that product. They're not going to do that. They're investing 30 to 50 million dollars in Wallingford, Connecticut to grow that factory out, and they're going to need a lot of folks to help work in that facility. So to Dale's point, you know, I represent manufacturing not only South Central Connecticut, but throughout the entire state. We've got companies like Bridgeport Fittings. We make some really cool military-grade antennas in the area. Chris was talking about some of the different companies, and when she was going down that list of SpaceX and Disney and the White House, I'm thinking, well, I sell to all those companies too, and it is really cool. There is value to saying that. The product I make is ductwork for industrial ventilation, and my product is in the White House. My product is used by SpaceX. Some of the other programs that are out there that are really unique, and it is cool to say that you are selling to these various operations and customer base throughout the entire country, as well as customers right here within our region. There's other products that we make here, everything from the rubber stamp, the Rubbermaid stamp that goes on the side of your garbage can. Somebody needs to make this stamp. That's done by my friend Kathy over at Sorrel Stamp. Vin had talked about women quickly in manufacturing. Over half the folks here in this room are women. A lot of my friends not only work in manufacturing, but they own the manufacturing companies. Phenomenal job opportunities for women in manufacturing, very good with dexterity as well. My friend Tom, who runs Bridgeport Fittings, has a lot of women in the factory floor. And then within the schools, a lot more career opportunities for women within the schools, which is great. Hamden's making sure when they create their program, it's open to everybody. And I know within the VOTEC program, there's a lot more women looking for careers in manufacturing. So in the interest of time, I will wrap it up, and thank you for the opportunity, Dale.
What are the books again?
Yep, I have lots of these here. It is stuff made in Connecticut, and again, it gives lots of samples. It summarizes everything that we've talked about here. So if you'd like one, grab one on the way out.
I'm sure there'll be questions and answers. I just wanted to give everybody their few minutes to present. So, as you can see, there's a lot of good careers out there making all kinds of stuff that's perfect to bring in all the, a very small sample of what is actually made out there, things you take. I like the inside of the Snapple thing. I mean, that little thing you would never even think where it was made. So one of the great gems of Hamden is Eli Whitney Technical School. Mary Moran is the principal, and she has been on the healthcare panel and on the trades panel. And now she's going to talk a little bit about Eli Whitney from the perspective of manufacturing and the relationship. There's a lot of tie-in. I think Chris was talking before about design and engineering, and so all of this gets tied together. You can't just always separate one thing from the other. So after Mary's presentation, we're going to do some questions from you, and then we'll leave some time for you to talk to the presenters tonight. Mary?
Well, this is an opportunity to talk about two of my favorite things, which is Eli Whitney and manufacturing. The 11 years before I became a school administrator, I worked at Pratt & Whitney. So manufacturing is near and dear to my heart. And my husband is going on 30 years at Pratt & Whitney at this point in time as an engineer. But in thinking about the things that people have said so far, a couple of things strike me, but one thing that's a theme that I think is really important is free is good. Free is good. Eli Whitney is a public school. Free is good. 8th graders apply to go to Eli Whitney, and they graduate from Eli Whitney able to. It isn't fair to say that my students are able to get an entry-level job. They're able to do better than get an entry-level job. My hairdressing students graduate as licensed hairdressers. My manufacturing students graduate able to take a job that is not entry-level. Now, no manufacturer expects that a student is going to walk into their facility already knowing the specific work that's done in that employer's job place. And in fact, having worked at Pratt & Whitney, some of it's secret. So we would never have expected people walk in already knowing how to do it. But if a prospective employee can walk in already knowing how to use basic measuring tools, and I'm not talking about the yardstick that your mom may have whacked you with when you were a child. My mom whacked me with a yardstick when I was a child. Or, just a ruler that you might have in your desk. I'm talking about verniers, micrometers, go, no-go gauges, coordinate measuring machines, things like that. If you already have the basic knowledge of those, if you already know the basics of how to operate a CNC machine, like a CNC miller or a CNC lathe, then you are not coming in entry level. You're coming in ready for someone to show you, okay, we make these and here's how we do it. And now you're on the job. And one of my students that worked this summer at a manufacturing plant, he was telling his mother that he was all psyched up to not return to his senior year in high school because he made loads of money. Well, she convinced him otherwise, that was not a good move to make, that he needed to stay and finish high school. But he's all jazzed up because he made more money in the summer than any of his friends that work at Dairy Queen or work at Dunkin' Donuts or work at Burger King. He was making $30 an hour as a high school junior. The manufacturing of today, as you've heard, is not the manufacturing of yesterday. And I can see this in my school because if you walked into the manufacturing shop that my school had before the building was renovated, it looked like manufacturing of yesterday. In fact, it kind of looked like a black and white picture out of a 1950s book. But come and see it now, because now it's like walking into a hospital. It's clean, it's bright, and it's filled with equipment that doesn't create fumes and lots of dirt. And yeah, there are things you have to clean up when you're doing manufacturing, but it looks like something almost from Star Wars. It's very modern, and it's very welcoming, and it's very bright, and it's very cheerful. And the students are learning the skills that they need to walk in and get the $30 an hour job, not the $15 an hour job. And free is good. They get it for free. But the other part of manufacturing that I want to talk about that also ties in with free is good, I worked at Pratt & Whitney for 11 years, and I have a 401k, and that 401k is going to contribute more to my retirement than the 20-plus years I will have with the state of Connecticut when I retire from serving the state of Connecticut. So in 11 years, I got enough money in a 401k that is more than the retirement I'm going to get from being a school administrator for 20 years. Additionally, Pratt & Whitney paid for my master's degree, 100% lock, stock, and barrel. I didn't pay 1 penny. Free is good. Pratt & Whitney paid for half of my doctorate. I did not pay 1 penny. Free is good. They would have paid for the other half, but I quit my job and I went to work for the state of Connecticut. Otherwise, they would have paid for the whole thing. What did you do there? I worked in human resources, and I organized training for people in the shop. And so I got to work I worked in East Hartford, I worked in Middletown, I worked in North Haven when there was a plant in North Haven. So I got to see all the different aspects of manufacturing. Some of these manufacturing plants are doing things that are mind-blowing. Pratt & Whitney has innovated things, and sometimes they try to solve a problem, and they end up not solving their problem, but creating something that they can sell to other companies. They created a process by which you can weld things by rubbing them together really hard. And it's a better weld than a welder can make. They innovated a process by which you can cut 2 parts that fit together in such a way that you heat up one of them and you chill the other one in a freezer and tap them together. And when the 2 of them come back to room temperature, they're together tighter than a weld. They invented a process for cutting sheet metal using a stream of high-powered water impregnated with garnets that really was of no use to them. It didn't solve the problem they were trying to solve, but they sold the trademark to someone else who's making a fortune out of this cutting technology.
I use it all the time. I get water jet stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I even saw a process where they could take a picture of a part that was created in a CAD system, have a computer feed it into a machine that looked like a vat, and this machine generated a magnetic field in the middle of the vat in the shape of this object, and then metallic particles were sucked up to the magnetic field, and when that was finished, you had a part. It's pretty astronomical, the kinds of things that are done. And these are things that are not going overseas. These are things that they can't do overseas because they don't have the infrastructure and they don't have the educational system to do these kinds of things. 2 quick stories I'll tell you about success in manufacturing. One is about my students at Eli Whitney. In 2003, a young man named Stanley Garcia graduated from plumbing. His son is in plumbing now. And in 2004, his brother Jonathan graduated from manufacturing. And they went to work in their respective trades. About 2 years after Jonathan graduated, he came to see me and told me that he had bought his mom a great present. I said, "Oh, what did you buy her?" I'm thinking a coat, a dinner, maybe a car, if we're really stretching. He says, "No, Stanley and I bought Mom a house." I kind of looked at him and said, "A what? A what? Like not flowers, perfume? No, we bought her a house." And I said, "How did you do that?" And he goes, "Well, we're single, we're young, we're kind of loaded, we're making money hand over fist, and Mom's never going to be able to afford to buy a house on her own. We bought her a house." So that's pretty impressive for 2 kids that have been out of high school for 2 and 3 years to buy Mom a house. The other story has to do with a couple people I met at Pratt & Whitney probably 22, 23 years ago, Dottie and her husband Arnie. And Dottie and Arnie were shop floor supervisors at Pratt & Whitney. Arnie had been a machinist and Dottie had been an inspector, and they were able to get promoted to supervisor. Dottie and Arnie had both been married before. This was their second marriage, and between the two of them, they had about 5 kids. And in conversations with Dottie, she would tell me about paying the tuition for the kids to go to college, and there's this whole big mess of kids, and so she's paying a whole big mess of tuition. And then she's talking about their vacation cottage in Maine, and then she's talking about how they're saving, they're going to purchase a Grady White when she retires, and I had to look that up to figure out what in the heck a Grady White is, but it's a giant, big fishing boat that is very good for when you're in the Gulf of Maine. That's kind of like the ocean, so you need a high-sided boat to go fishing there. And I'm thinking, wow, you know, this seems like a pretty extravagant lifestyle. Well, I worked in human resources, so I can look things up. I didn't look up their data. I couldn't look up their private information, but I could look up the pay scales. And they were both at the top of the hourly pay scale. They'd both been at the top of the hourly pay scale for a while, which meant that they got a bonus each year because they couldn't get raises anymore. So between the two of them, and this is about 22 years ago, remember, between the two of them, they were making $250,000 a year. So, yeah, they could have a vacation home in Maine, and they could save up for the Grady White, and they could put a whole mess of kids through college, and they didn't sweat it. No sweat, no problem. It's a great success story. They had great jobs, dependable work, and, you know, you can't beat it. Good benefits.
I tell the story, I think I told it at one of the other sessions when I was going to college. I told my father I was going to college, and he was mad at me. He wanted me to be an electrician. And so years later, when I owned a house, my second house, the thing I enjoyed doing the most, electrical work. Anyway, we're going to have some questions. Before we do, I just want to point out that, again, this is videotaped. It will be probably sent to you within a couple of weeks. I think we're going to subtitle this "Free is Good," Mary. And I also want to point out there was a question before about the upcoming sessions. This is the 4th of 8 sessions. In no particular order, we're going to be doing information technology. That's going to be a really interesting panel. I've got all private sector speakers for that one. Sustainability, environmental science, entrepreneurship, and how to start a business, because some young people want to take that path in life. And then we're going to do something on job readiness, about internships, how to improve your appearance, how to not look at your cell phone and develop good interview skills, which is a common problem. We're going to have a speaker on financial literacy who's spoken to high school students before and talk a little bit about student debt and scare the you-know-what out of them on the student debt issue. These 4 will happen somewhere between the end of March and the 1st of June. I don't know exactly where. We'll probably do 1 or 2 of these at Brundage Library on Circular Avenue to mix it up, and the other 2 will probably be here or at the Miller Senior Center behind here. So let's open it up to questions from the audience. And speak out your question, and I'll just repeat it because we're not going to put you on camera. Somebody's got to have questions.
Well, I have a question.
Yes, Pam.
A lot of these manufacturing guys in the state you were talking about are defense manufacturers, and don't they tend to be kind of dependent on federal budget things? Like, are the jobs really that steady, or do they wane and wax depending on the budget?
So the question really is about the federal impact on manufacturing jobs. I'm going to go with
I got one. All right, I'm doing a job now, and the one I explained that I was on the computer, that's a 13-year run. That's a $59 billion contract. That's a big one. So they may drop it sometime, but there's usually something else. And then there's the private sector, like stuff he was talking about. There's a lot of that out there, So It's not a lot of government contractors, but they also have long-term contracts with suppliers. So it spider webs out to the industry.
Yeah, the same with the electric boat, you know, the contracts for building the subs, they're years and years out. And so we are reliant on aerospace and defense, but we also have a very strong congressional delegation that's constantly down in DC, and through our association, we work with them closely and monitor this stuff. So these contracts go out for years. We have lots of suppliers that help support these businesses, so it's not just a Sikorsky, but it's many companies like VINS that are supporting these, so it is critical that we have these contracts, but we do know that they are long-term and they're not going anywhere anytime soon.
How many welders do we need?
Thousands of welders right now. It took me 6 to 9 months to just find 2 qualified welders, because we're all competing against each other to find welders. Work with Naugatuck. Naugatuck Valley Community College has a welding program, and as of just a couple years ago, that was the only program in this area. Electric Boat will come and want to hire every kid out of Platt Tech's manufacturing program right now, but we also have 40 other manufacturers working with Platt Tech and the 20 graduates. Same with Eli Whitney or Emmett O'Brien. We have what's called TTAC committees, Technical Trade Advisory Committees. So every manufacturing technology program has a technical advisory committee where you've got anywhere from a dozen to literally 40 manufacturers which are working with the educators, but you're only graduating, what, 20-plus kids out of that program each year? You know, 30 kids at the most?
18
Yeah.
manufacturing and 18 in drafting.
And then we have mechatronics over at Platt, so you got another, so, you know, 30 to 40 kids per school, that's it. And we've got 4 or 5 VOTEC schools in the region, which is why we're working very closely with the comprehensive high schools to reintroduce manufacturing. So as I mentioned, the meeting with the mayor in New Haven this morning, we're bringing manufacturing back to Hill House, to Wilbur Cross. I toured Derby High School last week. We're putting in an innovative, brand-new manufacturing program which will be competitive to the VOTEC schools, because we have such a need in this region.
Do you know if they put a machine shop in Hamden Hall? Yes.
He's-
They put a shop in Hamden Hall.
So, question? I'm sorry.
Well, I have lots of questions, but one question I have, so my son's a freshman at Eli Whitney, in manufacturing, and, he couldn't be here today because, I couldn't convince him, that it was worth his time, but I'm like, I'm going. He loves it, he loves Mr. Achille so much, and, I have pictures on my phone of the machinist shop, because I saw it on shop night, and I was in such awe. I had to take pictures of the machines. I was like, oh my God, I was overwhelmed. Anyway.
It's like Oz.
Anyway,
It's like walking into Oz.
yeah, in my daily life, that's not this, you know, you don't see that. So my question might be for you, like, okay, so he's taken care of, he's on this job path, he's really excited. What about people who are looking for a career later in life, like someone like me? Like,
Sure.
like,
Oh, there's-
what do you tell
Oh.
people like that?
There's lots of different career opportunities along the way. I mean, we're even working with AARP right now to bring folks out of retirement and back into manufacturing to be educators to help teach,
There's so
because
much demand.
we can't get enough folks to even teach the programs right now.
Well, that's what I was also wondering about Mr. Achille, like, how do we get this saint to come and teach when he could be
And-
making money?
We're working desperately to try to bring more teachers into manufacturing. I just want to touch on, since you mentioned him, and Angel, his predecessor, had told a story just echoing some of the things that we've heard here about a student that came back a year or 2 out of that program and showed Angel, his predecessor, his pay stub, which was 6 figures. And this kid is just 2 years out of this program making, 6 figures a year. So again, I mean, this is not every kid, but the stories just go on. And same at Platt. The instructor over here talks about the kids that come back after graduating. They don't pull up with their old beat-up car. They pull up with their BMWs. And, so I'll let Chris follow up.
Something that you can do right now, anyone who's a little bit older, actually anyone who's over 18, Workforce Alliance has this program called Skill Up for Manufacturing. We will be starting our second cohort in another couple of weeks. It's all full. but we will be having another cohort that will be starting in late April. You can apply online, and I do have flyers here. It is a 6-week program. We're doing most of them at Gateway, but we are doing some at Middlesex Community College, and we are working with other institutions now to try to get some agreements to have them house it as well. Judging by the first cohort, and this is the last week of the first cohort, everybody's been getting a job, including an individual, by the way, who is technically deaf, who got 2 amazing job offers. So I would encourage people to apply on our website online. It's www.workforcealliance.biz, and the name of the program is Skill Up for Manufacturing, and that's not going away either. Yeah, apprenticeship hours as well.
There's a question in the back? I'm sorry, did you have a question? Oh, I thought you raised your hand.
The diversity of that program, real quick, I think is awesome too. That program has everybody, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody that needs remedial math, which you provide 2 weeks of remedial math training. To some of the folks that are in that program have their bachelor's degree, and they're still in the Skill Up program because they see the opportunities.
One of the things, the byproducts of planning this series was that, of course, everybody has an opinion. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do it that way? We wanted to start with kids because there's a longer lead time in getting them. We have a young man right over here. But what has subsequently happened is, what about this group, that group, older folks that want to have a new career, ex-offenders that are being dropped off at bus stations everywhere in Connecticut every single month that are just want to have a better life and a new career, immigrants, refugees who have skill sets from other countries that could be transferred here. Thousands of jobs, you heard it tonight, thousands of jobs are available in this industry and many other industries, straight engineering and other things. So this is the beginning of a process. This series will, of course, be shown all over the town and continue, and we'll run it again next academic year, but we will move into other groups. Some of you are familiar with our work with IRIS, the refugee organization. They have many people that have come with, for example, HVAC skills, and they're looking for jobs. With adults, there's other opportunities for training and education. Porter and Chester just opened at the old Putnam Plaza, the old Acme Mall. They're sort of like Eli Whitney for grown-ups, if you will. And most people think they're kids just out of high school that are going there. Their average age of signing up is 25 to 60 years old to take classes in HVAC, auto repair, and things like that. And Pratt & Whitney has already been down to scope out the students that are taking their various programs, and other companies are already hiring people the week they sign up for classes. HVAC is like one of the biggest ones going right now. So this is really the beginning of a process. What's great about the town getting involved in planning a program like that and to have these kind of sessions is it's free. Free is good, right? It doesn't really cost, except for a lot of time planning them, it doesn't cost the taxpayers any money to put people together with businesses from the business perspective and tell you guys, taxpayers, what the opportunities are for you, your kids, your brothers, your cousins, and, your older kids. Any other questions? Because I'm going to let you loose to talk to the panelists for about 20 minutes before we have to clean up the room. There's got to be another question out there. Going once? Mick, question?
Thanks for doing this, Dale.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's a labor of love. All right, we're going to end it today. Thank you all for coming. Make sure you signed in the sign-in sheet, and it's legible. I've had some bounce backs because people didn't write their emails, and we could not trace them back. We will send you the follow-up videos. Please spend about 20 minutes or so talking to the panelists. That's all good stuff where you could talk one-on-one. Okay, thanks for coming.